Watch only in this edition of Dark and Darker News. Enthusiasts have been looking to run a private Dark and Darker server, and this is what it's come to. Nexon tries to fully ban Dark and Darker Iron Mace, trying to avoid being served with a subpoena. Nexon about an early access date for Dark and Darker. And much, much more. And so, as I predicted, Valve i.e. Steam has not returned the game based solely on Iron Mace emotional emails. A serious corporation like Valve, of course, would only rely on official court decisions or other legally enforceable dogma. Nexon, on the other hand, has decided to go further and ban Dark and Darker early access altogether. I mean, yes, Nexon don't even want the game out of Steam. To that end, Nexon has asked the court to rush the case, because if Dark and Darker comes out in early access, it could affect the case in court. It's logical to assume that Nexon's lawyers believe that if the game is released in early access, the course of the case could go not in Nexon's favor. Anyway, leaving aside the long legal delays, it is likely that a representative of Iron Mace will face Nexon in court in June, unless of course Iron Mace can somehow avoid the many notices that Nexon has sent them on Discord, in the mail and in many other places. Nexon have not yet proved copyright infringement in court. Accordingly, Iron Mace can start selling the game outside of Steam by starting early access and reasoning that they have not received any official request from Nexon or a court order. Thus, at the time of the court case, the status of the game could have changed, and this again could be in Iron Mace's favor. However, I'm not sure about Iron Mace's ability to avoid receiving notices. Iron Mace's recent collaboration with Ko-fi may have served as an additional factor for Nexon, who are apparently trying to cut off funding sources for Iron Mace, thereby bankrupting them. The next important news is that enthusiasts have been trying to develop the possibility of running the Dark and Darker server locally, but they failed and gave up on the multiplayer aspect, but will still fight for the possibility of single player with bots, which is generally a good thing. Will be able to better explore the map, bosses, and more. To summarize, here's what I want to say. I first clearly said, after analyzing the available information, that the situation with Nexon is very serious, and I was hated for it. Now that everything I warned about months ago has come true, they've started repeating my old position and claiming that y'all are over, it's pointless and futile, we're all doomed, now hounding me for any positive facts. By the way, on a positive note, Iron Mace decided to fight. At the beginning of the conflict, I saw doubts in their ranks, panic. Apparently they were weighing up the pros and cons, consulting lawyers, looking for finances. They needed time. Now, they have decided forever to use donations from people and are instead selling fan paraphernalia like they do with Ko-fi. The fact that Iron Mace is not using the heavy artillery of direct donations shows that they are not in the most critical situation, i.e. they have not yet exhausted all other avenues of fundraising. This is a small positive signal, i.e. they have time to design fan mugs and stuff. So, for the time being, they're not trashed. Overall though, the situation is of course still very serious, and there's no denying the fact that there's a chance that the game won't come out. In other words, if Iron Mace start collecting donations not through paraphernalia, but directly, then the situation is likely to be as critical as possible. Though personally, if I were Iron Mace, I would try to negotiate with Nexon for a percentage of the game's revenue. If Nexon has all these lawsuits started not by some major boss out of personal resentment, but indeed Nexon is primarily driven by personal gain, then obviously Nexona will not be able to make such a successful game, even if they completely destroy Iron Mace and Darker. Something similar was done, for example, by the developers of The Witcher 3 when the author of the book, Sapkowski, suddenly changed his mind and decided to sue them, even though he had originally already been paid a fixed amount as the author of the universe and was fine with it. Apparently he underestimated the potential of PC gaming and so then changed his mind. Now, as for running private servers. It's a crutch anyway, but I'd really like to have it as a time solution. Because it would be impossible to play seriously on private servers because of the donators and friends of admins that would absolutely be on such servers. It is the official game that is needed. I would also like to make a point about the importance of Steam. Without Steam, the online game has sagged considerably. Whatever enormous fee Steam charges, you have to admit that it allows itself such a boorish fee just for the fact that it really does increase the popularity of the game. Too significantly for it to be neglected. Yes, it is possible, as again a temporary solution, to run the game in early access outside of Steam, and then when, if, the courts are successful for Iron Mace, move the accounts of those who bought the game outside of Steam to Steam itself. This seems to be what was done with the game War Thunder. Also, many games have started to copy Dark and Darker, yes, absolutely unsuccessful so far, but maybe some of them will eventually grow into something bigger, like Ark, the Rust clone, for example, grew into something more. Perhaps some projects already in development, we'll find out later. In fact, there are no worthy games in this niche, and judging by the popularity of Dark and Darker, in the marketing of which no significant investments were made, it is not a plowed field for business. The main thing is to combine business with pleasure and make a game for people, not some grindy pay-to-win crap. It's important to understand that a trial with Nexon has many possible outcomes. Even if Nexon wins, the outcome of a win could be different. It won't necessarily mean the total destruction of Iron Mace and Dark and Darker. So, hope dies last.